Good evening, everyone. We're ready to get our program started for the night. It's cool, yeah, just holding the microphone like this. I feel like a rock star or something, like I should sing. You guys want me to sing? No? I get that a lot. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Heartland Institute for a very special Heartland movie night. Can you turn the mic down just a little bit? Just turn it down. No, down a little bit. There you go. Thank you. This very special Heartland movie night. We don't do these a lot, but when we do them, they're really special, and it's fantastic to see so many people here tonight. This venue sold out tonight. We couldn't fit any more people in here. We had to stop registration last night, and so you are of the select few 75 people that are here. So thank you for that. I usually do a longer spiel about what the Heartland Institute is all about. I will do that in 20 seconds. We are a 34-year-old free market libertarian conservative think tank. We were founded in Chicago, Illinois, and we've been here in this wonderful building with the beautiful Andrew Breitbart Freedom Center since 2015. We are a nonprofit organization. We survive by the donations of the people in this room and people all over the world who want to support free markets and greater individual liberty. And there's information on your tables tonight where if you're not yet a supporter, a partner really with Heartland in pushing for freedom, we very much encourage you to do so. There's cards here on your table that I wish you would fill out for us today. It's a lot safer than doing this through Gmail or something, as you're going to learn in a few minutes. This will not be shared with Google or the government or anybody else. This is just a way for us to make sure we have your current information and can work with you in our mission to spread freedom. There's also donation cards on your tables as well. Because this is a bit longer program than we usually have here tonight, because this movie is about 81 minutes long, I'm going to just right now welcome to make a few remarks before we start the show. The director of The Creepy Line, Matthew Taylor, and one of the producers of the Creepy Line, Michelle Taylor. Please welcome them.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much for taking your time to view our film. We became concerned about what Google and Facebook do a couple of years ago, and about a year ago we started production on this project. I've worked with Peter Schweitzer before on other projects, and he and I got together and we decided to take a look at what Google and Facebook do and how does it relate to our democracy. And so we put together this film. My wife, Michelle, produced it. We have a lot of interesting information that is constantly changing on a day-to-day basis, but this is a foundation to start with, to start analyzing how you what you do on your online platforms and what they're up to, and what does it mean for the furthering of our democracy. So I hope you enjoy the film.
I would just say one other thing. The hardest part of making this film is the news kept changing and happening as we were making it throughout the year. And there had to come a point where it was just like we had to pull the plug. We had to finish the film. So we probably stopped kind of working on it July 31st, around there. So a lot has happened since then, which we will hopefully will be able to talk to you guys a little bit afterwards as too. But this is as up to date as we can make it. And then, of course, Google and Facebook kept doing bad things over and over. So they were a fertile ground for us to work with, which I guess we have to thank them for that. Dream for filmmakers. So thank you guys very much. We look forward to talking to you guys afterwards.
Thank you.
Google and Facebook, they don't sell you anything. They sell you.
These are all free services, but obviously they're not. Your interaction with them is governed so that it will generate revenue.
You give Google a lot of information. You're searching for the most private stuff on Google, things that your wife might or your spouse might not want you to know about.
Facebook constantly manipulates their users. They do it by the things that they insert into the news feeds, and they do it by the types of hosts they allow their users to see.
They can suppress certain types of results based on what they think you should be seeing, based on what your followers are presenting.
It's what Google and Facebook are doing on a regular basis by suppressing stories, by steering us towards other stories rather than the stories we're actually seeking. That's the real manipulation that's going on.
I was a design ethicist at Google, where I studied how do you ethically steer people's thoughts.
It will always favor one online music service over another and one candidate over another. Google and Facebook has the power to undermine democracy without us knowing that democracy has been undermined.
There's what I call the creepy line, and the Google policy about a lot of these things is to get right up to the creepy line but not cross it.
Google crosses the creepy line every day.
Well, now that they're up here on stage, how about another round of applause for that fantastic and important documentary? We'll get the questions and answers going here right away. Most of you here know the rules. If you put your hand up, somebody with a microphone will come to you. Wait for that microphone to be held in front of you and speak away. It would be helpful to our guests if you identify yourself, maybe even tell us where you're from, so they have a better idea of to whom they're speaking. I'll just get the Q&A started right off the bat here. The information there is amazing in that documentary, The Creepy Line. Very important information. No offense, but why didn't somebody else make this documentary years ago before you did? Why is this really only coming out because of the great work of you, Matthew, and you, Michelle?
Well, you know, I think we all got wrapped into the excitement of all the free things and all the communication and all the connection. I know Peter Schweitzer had been interested in looking at Google and Facebook as early as 2009. I've been watching their rise since the late 90s. I'm a tech guy myself. It's very exciting. Look, we can communicate with people. We have cell phones. The iPhone came out in 2007. You are able to communicate with your kids, your spouse. You're able to look up any information. It's free. It's this and that. But there's a dark side. There's a cost. Things are not really free, and we're not really understanding the ramifications of what the cost is until now. Now things are coming to light that free was, in fact, not free at all.
Indeed. Okay. We have a question right back here.
Thank you. This was unbelievable, and I thank you that we saw this. But I want all my other organizations I belong to be able to see it. Can we get your contact info, and will you go to other places and do the same thing?
Yes, we'd be happy to. Sorry. Yeah, we would be happy to do that. And the film is available on iTunes and Amazon in 30 countries, actually, as of this week. So we're hoping it'll be kind of streamed around the world. We're doing kind of tours. We've had screenings around the country and in Canada. And we're actually launching out to do some screenings in Berlin, Brussels, and London next year. Because ironically, they take it much more seriously than we do about privacy. So they've actually asked us to bring it over there and kind of do some meetings and everything with European lawmakers. We had a tough time getting it in front of U.S. lawmakers, but the European ones have actually been reaching out pretty aggressively and asking us to get involved over there.
We have a question right here.
So I'm Anthony Ciani. I live in Palatine, Illinois, just on the other side of the expressway. And a brief comment about 5 or 6 years ago, I started noticing that searches on Google were becoming much less productive. And of course, knowing that they were manipulating the search results, I would fight against the algorithm to try to manipulate it to give me the searches that I was actually looking for, rather than trying to blow Democrat dogma up my, where the sun doesn't shine. But it was blatantly evident that the results were manipulated, and of course, when you're fighting against somebody that's trying to manipulate you, you kind of notice it. Well, one of the things I realized from Epstein's results that you presented in the Creepy Line, the college-educated, sort of upper middle class are breaking strongly towards a certain party. And I kind of realized that they're probably among that group who's more likely to trust the results that they're getting from Google.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, what's interesting about what Epstein did is he was, first of all, he's the only one who's ever tracked them. When you do these searches and when the returns come back and the autofills come back, that is ephemera. Those things are gone. They're never, you can never pull them up. You can never look at them. You can never see if the results were the same. He saved everything. He saved it all. He's, I think, 86,000 searches that he saved. He saved every autofill, every return, every order, and he is currently building a system right now as we speak that can actually compute bias based on the system you saw in the film. So he'll be able to know when somebody returns bias results, whether it be on YouTube or Facebook or Google. It's a system he's building. We were hoping he would have it done in time for the 2018 midterm elections, but unfortunately it was not ready yet, but it will be ready for the 2020 elections to help compute bias. So it is being worked on by Epstein in his research. And this was a test run that was terrifyingly productive.
We're going to go back here, and then we'll have one up here up front on the right. Ma'am?
Hi. I'd like to know what search engine you use.
Well, you know, this is the sad truth. There is not many alternatives, if any alternative. If you use Yahoo, Yahoo references Google's quarantine list. A couple years ago, Microsoft made a deal with Google where they called off all of their lawsuits, and all of a sudden Bing got much better. So there's a lot of thought that they are also referencing Google's index. And so you can try a DuckDuckGo, but that's more of a aggregate page, or you can try Start Page. But at the end of the day, out of all of the tools that are available, the search is the one that cannot be avoided. You cannot use Android, you cannot use Gmail, you cannot use a bunch of other things. You can try to avoid being tracked by Google Analytics. The search engine is unfortunately the best option out there. They did the work. The search engine works when not doing bad things. It's the best. So there is no real alternative right now for the search engine.
That said, the best alternative is startpage.com. It was kind of created out of MIT actually not too long ago. It doesn't track you. It's completely private. You won't get the ads and stuff like that. So if you want to switch, that's the best alternative. It is.
It is.
It's startpage.
Startpage.com.
Right. And remember, if you just unplug everything and move into the woods, Google Maps will find you. Right here.
Hi, thank you. The question I had was actually going to be a more expanded version of what hers was, and instead of just what search engine do you use, what mobile operating system do you use, what email client do you use, all of those things, what are the things that you use instead? Because I've heard that Proton Mail is an example of something you could go to. I happen to use Brave browser on both my computer and my phone, and I was wondering what your thoughts on what some of those alternatives were.
Yep. Proton Mail is great. Brave is great. Signal is another one. I mean, we have additional content that's on our website that talks about a number of things that are not in the movie. So for example, there's a lot of controversy right now with WhatsApp. So Facebook wants to serve ads in WhatsApp, which means that in order to serve ads, they're actually looking at your conversation, and hence it's no longer end-to-end encryption. So the other thing you have to look at is that make sure that these companies that you use are not either bought by Google and you don't know it, or Facebook and you don't know it. But yes, those are platforms that are very good. iOS is better than Android. Obviously, Apple has taken a very harsh stance on privacy and data, so their operating systems tend to be more secure. But if you use Safari, Google pays $3 billion a year to make sure that Safari's default browser is Google. And so when you use Safari, you're actually using Google. And that's a deal. I mean, Google made these deals with these other companies. Instead of going to war, Steve Jobs wanted to spend his entire fortune to destroy Google, they decided to sign deals, and they thought it was more profitable than competing.
When you say default browser, do you mean default search?
The search, yeah. When you open your phone and just search, that's actually Google. So people don't realize that. That's a really important point I try to let people know, is that usually you go to google.com, but on your phone, it is google.com. It's just embedded in Safari. Now you can go into your settings and change it to another search engine, but it's by default Google search.
And I would just say one other thing. For an alternative on email, Proton is probably the best out there. It's just protonmail.com. It's created in Switzerland, purely encrypted. Outlook is probably the easiest US one that is less of a problem. So Microsoft's Outlook has the most protection, doesn't track you as much, and is a little bit easier to use than Proton. And then Signal is a text messaging app that's the most encrypted and protected out there.
Yeah, I actually used Hotmail since 1997, and people used to make fun of me, and now they're not making fun of me anymore. So it's pretty untouched.
Back here in the back of the room.
Never let anybody hold the microphone. That's a new rule. If you're familiar with that. I actually use AOL still, if anyone's ever heard of that. But I'm Googling you guys right now. And on your page, start page, it says best horror video is the first search that comes up. So it's just sort of interesting. But I was trying to look at your Wikipedia page. So two questions. Are you being shadow banned at all for your movie? And why don't you have a Wikipedia page about the movie?
Well, I actually don't have a large web presence on purpose. With these kinds of projects, I think it's better to let the project stand on their own. There's a lot of complications when you use social media. There's a lot of ways that people can twist and contort your words. I'd rather the projects stand on their own, and I just keep my fingerprints digitally off of these projects.
About Wikipedia, though, specifically, as you know, people can add whatever they want to it, and it takes a long time to get it off. So we just chose not to go there because we didn't know what on earth was going to show up one day and the weeks that it would take to challenge that. So we felt like it was safer to avoid that. So, yeah, that's kind of, it's a little bit more low-key there. Regarding, we have had challenges with Facebook trying to promote the film. Ironically, they're still a platform where everyone is at, so we wanted them to see it. The biggest cost that we've run into is that they will charge us much higher rates than they do anything else. So for anyone to see our message, they're like running out the money, basically, putting our marketing costs to such a high extent that it's very challenging to get it out there.
Let's go right here in the back, and then we'll come over here.
Hi, my name is Jim Mitchell. Many years ago, when I was out in Newport, wherever it was, I bought a piece of property, and I was talking to a guy, and I said, about this, that, and the other. And he talked about any unit of government, whether it's communist or capitalist, they abhor anarchy and chaos. Point one. Second point is we've heard discussion in Congress about the electronic magnetic pulse, which will shut off everything. So, with Google and all these other people, what happens if they go silent? That's anarchy and chaos because we lose the ability to communicate. Is anybody taking a look at how does a society then regroup, restructure itself to begin to take back the original things we had when we didn't have all this stuff? To me, that's the bigger fright out of all of this, is that if we're being controlled and manipulated, and we're no longer controlled and manipulated, we have anarchy and chaos. Is anybody taking a look at that as an issue?
Well, I think, you bring up a very good point. Right now, most people see Google and Facebook as the web search or Gmail or a social network. Their reach is so vast and so integrated into many of the things that we're not even really aware of, that there's a danger to actually messing with them too much. So, for example, parts of the Pentagon may sit on Google servers. We know, a whole variety of almost every business in the world sits on Google servers. Most press, as what you saw in the film, sit on Google servers. You may have Android running the GPS in your cars. They may be controlling satellites that control telecommunication. So when you mess with Google, you're actually putting parts of our economy in danger, which is why we have to be very careful on the regulatory front with how we actually deal with these companies, because they aren't just your email server and they're not just your search engine. They are literally running the stoplights at your intersection. They're running the power grids in certain parts of the country. They're all sitting on Google. And so they have managed to permeate every aspect of our life, both in the private sector and the public sector, which means that we are all going to have to proceed extremely carefully with separating ourselves from these companies and coming up with a solution, because it could very well cause chaos by breaking them in half or doing something that would shut down parts of, could shut down parts of the economy. It could separate us communication-wise from other parts of the world. So no, it's something it's a very, very real thing we have to look at and think about as we proceed forward.
Okay, we're going to go right here in the front of the room. No, you, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Thank you. My name is Lori Yokohama. I'm a Fourth Ward GOP committee person in the city of Chicago. Your film was fabulous, but I'm just curious, have you done any type of analysis of your audience reaction based upon age? And the reason why it comes to mind is I have an associate who's in his late 30s, and we talked about privacy issues and about how, like, the Alexa and, how we're being watched by Big Brother. And his response was, "Oh, I'm not concerned. I have nothing to hide." And I'm thinking, do you understand what you're saying? And I guess I look around this room and I think most of us are probably, the average age here is in the 60. But we understand that. We understand that we've fought, to maintain our privacy. But there's this whole generation, or there's this whole group of people that it seems like they don't care. And I mean, I have two kids that are in their 20s, and I've tried to emphasize, do not put anything on Facebook, that you would be embarrassed about in the future. So I'm just curious about audience reaction to your film.
I've noticed in doing the screenings and talking to people, and this is proven out a little bit in the data, though we've only had the film out for a little over a month, so the data is not almost enough of it to do a hardcore analysis, but we will definitely be getting there. Obviously, those over 60 who didn't grow up with these have been very concerned. I would say kind of that mark is around 40 years old or something, where you start seeing a serious amount of concern because they didn't have this growing up. They didn't realize what was being taken from them. But I'm also surprised that those under 22, a surprising amount, considering I didn't think any of them were going to do this, are actually lashing back, and they're the ones dropping their Facebook accounts actually more quickly than those over 55. So the ones that are leaving Facebook, that you hear the things that their stocks are down, they're losing members, they might only be going over to Instagram, which is of course owned by Facebook, but they are the ones actually causing the most damage right now to Facebook and its shares, because they're the ones dropping it the quickest. So there is that underlying thing that they are waking up a little bit. Ironically, the 25 to 35, 40-year-olds, they're the ones that are like, who cares? Like, it was so exciting. I got all the benefits from it. I don't really want to give that up yet. Versus a little younger than that, they don't know any different, and that kind of freaks them out.
We'll go right back here, sir.
Yes. Who are the predominant purchasers of advertising data? And can you salt your home page and your Facebook page to make you undesirable for these search engines?
Well, here, I'll answer the first question first. Everybody is buying from Facebook and Google. I mean, everybody. We just had an election. We spent probably, I think, over $5 billion in advertising dollars. And I think it was 2016 was the first time you had a 50-50 split in digital versus broadcast, and that number is moving faster and faster. And look, Google and Facebook are the two largest media buyers in the world. They control all of it. So everybody goes to them. I mean, there's no. Eventually, I could see there's no. It will be, as in all industries they get into, there will be no option. There will be no buying broadcast television for broadcast providers. Honda will have to work with Google. They probably already do, and it will be totalitarian in who buys what in advertising, because it will be all digital, and they will control the rails, and they will control the content on the rails. Now, making yourself undesirable on your platform, look, you are a consumer of something, and Google wants to provide what you consume to you. So if you're undesirable one way and like undesirable things, then that's what they'll sell to you to collect your data. Because at the end of the day, it is about collecting your data. Whether you are right, left, tall, short, doesn't matter. That is the business model. And so there is no way for you to not be desirable. As long as you consume and as long as you output some information, you are desirable. Unless, of course, you're a Republican and post something on Facebook, and then the post is probably not desirable. So,
yeah, maybe that's the secret. Just keep putting conservative stuff up there, and they'll leave you alone. You'll disappear.
You'll be censored, that's for sure.
All right. We got questions over here soon, but we got one right here.
I have a question. Just before coming here, I got 3 phone calls within about a 10-minute period asking me not to hang up. Google AdWords wants to talk with me. And that surprised me. You know, I've got these for some time, but, you know, it separates by a day or 2 or 3 or a week. But all of a sudden, within 10 minutes, they were contacting me. Have you experienced something like that?
I mean, yeah, look, you know, we all hear the story of I was talking about going to the Bahamas, and all of a sudden I saw ads on Google or on when I said you were going to the Bahamas. You know, are they listening to that extent? In some instances, maybe. But, you know, again, there is a certain extent where, remember, these platforms are surveillance platforms. That's all they are. The Gmail, surveillance. Google Maps, surveillance. Google Docs, surveillance. They are just surveillance platforms. That's it. Remember, we say in the movie, you are the product. They surveil you. If you're going to see a movie about how Google's terrible, well, they might try to sell you information on how Google's terrible. I mean, it's not outside of the realm of how their business model works. So, yeah, I mean, if you have a phone, does anyone here not have a cell phone? All right. Well, then we're all on the network. So there's something. You know, this is part of the business model. So yeah, it's very within the realm of possibility and probably happening on a daily basis. Where, you know, now is it that they know you? Well, maybe not, but there is algorithms, and they are working on AI and things like that to become more personal and to serve you things more accurately. But that's really what they're trying to do, is hone in on who you are. And as you heard Eric Schmidt at the end of the film say, the next decade is trying to, they want to be your brain, and they want to tell you what to think. And they want to answer your question before you ask. That's what the Alexa is in the Google Home. You don't get an option of 10 options. You get one answer. The answer.
We're going to go right here.
Hi, I want to ask about government surveillance, because your movie was about private surveillance, and you left out the link on how, I mean, I've heard that the CIA gave seed money to Google, and your movie didn't touch on that maybe the government is using these companies to get information on the public. I mean, the Fourth Amendment requires a warrant before searches, and the NSA scoops up all our information anyway. But now Google and Facebook and all these other guys are doing it, and maybe there's a back channel where the government's getting it, because you don't need a warrant to. I mean, the government needs a warrant to come onto my email, but if they go to Google, they don't need a warrant.
The CIA and intelligence agencies were involved in the early stages of these technologies. I mean, I would say in some ways, and this has probably never been said before, I probably trust the NSA more than Google. I mean, look, it's the government by design God bless our founding fathers, was by design inefficient, right? It's slow, it's meandering, it's got many checks and balances. These companies are not inefficient. They have none of the restrictions that our government does. They have none of the inefficiencies. They have none of the any kind of accountability that the NSA does. The NSA still has some kind of accountability. The NSA still kind of functions in a broad way, whereas Google and Facebook do not. So while the CIA was involved in these tools, and while law enforcement does work with Google, and while Google does give information to law enforcement, if Google and Facebook wanted to flip that switch and be more totalitarian in how they acted, which beyond what they are now, I have to say they'd be much more terrifying than the NSA or the CIA or the FBI or any president we don't like, or Congress. I mean, these guys can't agree with each other to get things done. Google always gets things done, and they have the power to do it, and they do it every day.
We'll go right over here. George?
It's real easy to search using an incognito page. Does that help at all?
VPNs and things do help. They do help. But again, if you touch a page that has Google Analytics on it, like, they can still track your behavior. They still own that behavior. So there are ways around it. If you set up VPNs and you set up all of the things and bounce around the world like we see in movies, off of servers and things, you can avoid being tracked. But again, it's one of those things where it comes down to, again, when someone asked earlier, what we used Google search to make this movie. How else were we going to find certain pieces of information? It's just one of those things where you eventually we're all taking a risk of using these tools because you can't afford not to. Your business sits on these servers, and if they move your business to page 2, well, you're done.
Yeah, I was thinking more about just doing a plain search from an incognito page, because you're led to believe that Google doesn't keep track of those searches.
I wouldn't trust anything that they lead you to believe. Yeah. I would not. They have no look. If you have a company that has been caught doing bad things more times than fingers and toes that I have, if there was any other company in the world that created products that were this dysfunctional, would you use them? I mean, we don't. Oh, my phone doesn't work. I get a new phone. I'm not using that brand anymore. The service at this restaurant was terrible. I'm not going back. That's how we work. Yet Google and Facebook somehow have our trust, even though they leak our information and they steal our information and they manipulate us. And for some reason, these companies, we just let them off the hook. I mean, Apple, if there's a design flaw in their phone, their stock drops, and people don't buy it, and they have to correct. And Google and Facebook don't.
We'll take one right over here.
I work for a small company, and I know my boss is big on Google search and putting certain words on our website that bring us to the front page and move us up in the search. Do you find any positive notes that you can say about Google or Google search to help promote and grow small businesses or businesses in general based on their search engines?
Yeah, I would say that if you're a small business, you need to be on that first page of Google. Otherwise, no one's going to see you. You saw Luther Lowe say in there, almost no one goes to the second page. So yes, they do provide that service in terms of if you're looking for some sort of a print shop company in a certain area, using search engine optimization like you're talking about to get on that front page goes a long way. It will help the business at least drive eyeballs and traffic to you. That's a very good way small businesses can use it, knowing that, though, you're being tracked and then the users that are coming to your site are being tracked, but yes.
And also knowing that if they don't like you for any reason whatsoever, they can just kick you to page 2. And you're gone. I mean, why should Google have that power to wipe your business out by just flipping a switch?
Tell us about it. Right, Tim? We have one right here.
Yeah,
real fast. It's not even. My name is Diane. I'm a committeeman, like Lori. Anyways, real fast. There is something that everybody needs to look up: Google, HARP, and Agenda 21. It's amazing. I don't know if you know. I forget if it was Larry Page or Sergey Brin. One of them, their mothers worked for NASA. I mean, it's really nasty and tentaculated. And to this gentleman's thing, the CIA. Remember the Operation Mockingbird hearings? They're on steroids now. You know, you think we're getting news? It's not news. It's pure propaganda. So it's not really a question. I just wanted to make a statement, declaratory statement. But thank you. Excellent presentation. Really enjoyed it. But these people are all connected to one another, and we're all product, and we're all being manipulated.
So fake news you talked about, and fake question. That wasn't a question at all. Right behind you there.
Location data. You know, how much data does Google have? I mean, does it? I have an Android phone. Does Google know that I'm here at Heartland right now?
Yes. In fact,
what can I do to prevent? Can I do anything to prevent that? So two parts.
There is no way to prevent it if you use an Android phone. There's no way. That is the opt-in part. For example, let me give you a little an interesting story. There was, I believe it was Google, was geofencing gun shows. And what geofencing means, you basically set up a perimeter around a location, like a virtual perimeter, and when somebody crosses through the perimeter, that phone pings because it has to ping off the satellites and towers, and they basically created a list of people who are buying guns. This is the thing we know about. And remember, for everything we know about, there's a bunch of stuff we don't know about. I mean, there's a whole vast, but this is one thing we do know about. They can fence off a physical location. They can fence off this building. And when you cross into the perimeter, if you have something on here that you got to use the internet or you got to get your email, they can know that. They can know that you went into that show. They can know you went to the baseball card or Comic-Con or went to church. They can do that. And the thing is, here's the thing. It's not a problem that they can do it. It's the problem that they may be doing it for reasons that are outside of their mandate. So yes, they make gun registry. They track people who you're being tracked one way or another anyway. Because remember, surveillance platforms. But if they have a real kind of mission, like say guns. They'll make a concerted effort to do things like geofencing locations. Because here's the thing: as a person, I've worked on campaigns before. We can do that too. Anybody can do it. Anyone can geofence locations, geofence rallies, and collect your information while you are present there. Because what is everyone doing while you're waiting to see the candidate come out? Well, you're surfing the internet, right? And guess what's on those web pages as you surf? Ads. And where do those ads come from? Well, they're being served to you by Google, and hence you're being surveilled while you wait at the DMV. I mean, this is how it works. So yeah, they're tracking all the time, and it's best to have not an Android phone. I'm sorry.
I would say one other kind of interesting story. You never know who the apps that you actually have on your phone also have been developed by. A lot of, this is just one example, weather apps, maybe not the Weather Channel, but all the other ones, often are created by larger entities who want to get your data of where you are. Because what do you do when you first arrive at a location? Or kind of, especially if you have it on your phone that they can always update. So that way they know, oh, you're in Pittsburgh this weekend. I'm going to sell you ads that are based just on Pittsburgh. So half the things you might even be downloading are owned by other entities purely just to sell your data to other companies. So their business model is just selling your data, not giving you the weather. That's just the means of how they get your data.
Yeah. So Google already knows you're here, so you might as well just donate to the Heartland Institute. It's over already. Give us $100. Yeah. Use Google Pay too. What the heck? Right here.
Oh, Nancy Thorner from Lake Bluff. I'm concerned, and are you too, that Google is now going to the countries, China particularly, which is really our enemy, and they're using their network or their rhythm, whatever it is, to manipulate their people and also artificial intelligence, and this could hurt the United States, and yet, I mean, they serve China, which is a really big problem in my eyes.
Well, I could not agree with you more on that one. You know, for a long time, Google actually took the right stance on China. They said, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to, you know, we're the good guys. We're not into subjugating people, except in America. But no, with Project Dragonfly, which, to be honest with you, until recently, they didn't really even acknowledge. They see a large market there, and I think that they have perfected their ability to manipulate and sway people in a free market. So it makes perfect sense to integrate it with a closed market or a pseudo-closed market, whatever China currently is. And so it's very disturbing that they would pick, for example, I think it's Google picked contracts in China over the Pentagon. Because apparently the Pentagon does not line up with their values, and China does. So again, this is a company that, by the way, controls all of our information. I mean, really think about that. They chose China over us.
All right, we're going to go right here to Philip, and then lady in red back there, and then another one over here.
When I have something particular to say that, you know, will take a particular position, I don't put it on the internet, but I will have typed it all out on my Apple on one of the possibilities they have for creating documents. And is there any computer or system out there where you can type things and then make flyers or send it snail mail without it being released to Google or anyone else?
Absolutely. I think, you know, a lot of the computer platforms and you know, Windows and Mac OS, your standard traditional desktops are typically fine. Microsoft has been making some fairly interesting maneuvers lately with their next version of Windows, which may be more data collecting as an operating system. And of course, they're 95% of the desktop market, and Apple's only 5% of the desktop market. So Apple tends to, they actually very much went in a different direction than Google and Facebook, because remember, they are beholden to us as consumers. So and they're also in competition with these companies, and they found an opportunity to really push their privacy and data. In fact, I just read an article that I think was Mark Zuckerberg just told all his employees they have to use Android phones because Tim Cook was critical of the data collection model that Facebook uses. So yes, you can use your Mac and type on Microsoft Word. Don't use Google Docs, but you can type on Microsoft Word, and you should be fine. I mean, unless someone spies on your computer, but you know, for the most part, those kinds of activities we traditionally do are fine. It's any of these online services, and eventually, I mean, I'm sure Apple's going to have to break down eventually, because if the entire industry is moving towards data collection as the business model, there will come a point where they won't be able to sell enough phones. They're not as valuable as your information, and they may have to move towards services eventually, and I think that will actually be kind of a bummer.
We go right here.
Well, you were saying about the Android phones. I've always had an Android phone. I was going to ask you about the iPhones. Would that be better? But you're saying they're eventually going to move to that. But for now, they're a better deal than as far as information collecting?
I would say they are better. But again, you know, these new phones you're always connected to something. You're always connected to somebody. So they are better. But it also depends on what you put on them. Again, like I said, if you go to your Safari browser in your iPhone, you are on Google. You know, so yeah, if you use Apple Mail, we found out this year sits on Google servers. Siri references Google search. So look, Apple they're really a great hardware company. They build a beautiful operating system. They don't track you as much, but they didn't build the index to the internet. Google did. And so if you build a really great device, but you have to access you have to access the internet, well, you got to go through Google. They're the gatekeeper. So it's a better product because it's inherently not tracking you and doing those things. But once you start adding all the apps and everything, well, that's, again, like the weather apps. That's where you start getting into trouble, and half the time you won't even know it.
This will have to be our last question right here from the audience.
So two quick questions. Are you finding support from educators wanting to educate younger kids about these issues? And second, just on a personal note, were there any stories particularly memorable or unexpected that occurred as you were making the documentary that are worth sharing?
Yeah, I have a really freaky story, actually. I'll start there. Well, you know, I went to San Diego to interview Dr. Robert Epstein, and I went into his home, and I went back to New York where I live, and I could not get on Google.com with the laptop I brought into his house for like 2 days. It was super weird.
Google.com, it did not exist.
I could not get online. And what he told me was half the time, it isn't kind of important, we talked about this in our podcast, it's not like it's Larry Page and Zuckerberg sitting there going, this is what we're going to do, this is the plan. There's all these low-level engineers who are doing all these things, who kind of operate like independently, and they just mess with people. So Dr. Robert Epstein writes an article, and he can't get online all of a sudden. It's just some guy just saying, well, I'm going to, and you know, what are you going to do about it? There's nothing you can do. And so half the time, it's not like it's a mandate. There's just these smart 15-year-old super geniuses just flipping switches and messing with people, or geofencing and things like that. So that was one story that was super freaky.
We had another one with when the film was done and we were doing our trailer. We were going to submit it to Judge, and he was going to kind of announce it, run it for the first time, the Judge Report. And so we put it on YouTube because that's really the biggest platform for people to actually see it. I get the irony there. Within 8 minutes of us putting it up on a brand new account that never existed 8 minutes ago, we were completely shut down. Like, our account did not exist. It said that we had been we were gone 100%. We were actually kind of excited because we were like, this is an amazing story. This is like the best press we want. But they did give it back to us about 4.5 hours later. And our thought was that some lowly person freaked out or did something, cut it off, sent it to legal, and the legal was like, no, that's way worse, put it back online, give them what they want. But that was like 8 minutes. It was amazing how fast it was. We had never had this account. It was brand new, and it didn't take very long.
You're very generous. I think it was a warning, actually. I don't think it was an accident. It's supposed to scare the heck out of you.
It was
it's supposed to scare you.
You don't think that these things can happen, but you know, once they target, you're on the list. Yeah. You know, it's you're on the list, and they have the power.
People from Google were watching the film and the press's response to it. Right. They actually came to us and told us they were responsible to do that. So we knew they were watching everything that we were doing, the film's promotion, which is why one thing it's made it actually challenging to promote the film, because they control the platforms to do so.
Yeah, what a surprise. One last question, and we can wrap up for the night, because we haven't talked very much about Facebook, and we were chatting right before the lights came up during the movie. There's some news about Facebook from Washington, D.C., isn't there, Michelle?
Yeah, the New York Times came out with a story today, kind of just going back over the past year of Facebook trying to dig itself out of the hole that it found itself in post-Cambridge Analytica. And they had said that Sheryl Sandberg herself took a very active role in focusing on lobbying people on Capitol Hill to, you know, kind of not do the regulations they didn't want. And one of the things they did is they actually hired a Republican opposition research firm to dig into all of the activists who were against Facebook and upset at what happened, especially with Cambridge and everything else, and Russian collusion and stuff, and to put out false stories about them, including tying a lot of the activists to George Soros, ironically. And that was a very, like, they specifically spent a good half of the year digging into who these people were, who these leaders were, and then putting press out about them that was negative towards them as human beings, not even their political stances. So that was just part of a misinformation campaign that they just could take up at that level. And we didn't even know.
Well, on that happy note, how about another great round of applause for this fantastic filmmakers for the presentation tonight.
Thank you all for watching. Appreciate it.
And before you go, as I've reminded in the beginning,